Hi everybody, and welcome back to another segment of the M.O.B. Report. I'm your host, Christopher Stone, and here with us today again is Jeanne Galloway, the Director of Health with the town of West Springfield. Jeanne, glad to have you back on here.
It's nice to be back. Thanks, Chris.
And so the warm temperatures are back. It's time to take those vacations and whatnot. It's spring and summertime. But along with that comes some health matters that we need to address and be aware of, correct?
Absolutely.
All right, so
Every season a new thing.
That's right, that's right. So let's dive right into the first topic, which is heat-related illnesses. I try to do my homework a little. There's, there's heat stroke, there's heat exhaustion, and heat cramps. Can you kind of dive into those and describe the differences?
I think everybody's probably suffered a little bit of the heat exhaustion when you've been out working in the yard and haven't taken a break in a while. You get a little woozy. Yeah, that's kind of from the lack of water, and it changes your whole metabolism. You're losing some salts and things that are very essential to keeping your body running appropriately. So it's very important to hydrate when you're outside and when the weather's warm, whether you're outside or not. If it's warm, keep hydrated. Keep hydrated anyway. But sure. Heat-related illness, it's a progression. So it goes from exhaustion to heat cramps to heat stroke, which can be fatal. So it's very important that you take steps and recognize it while it's going along and keep hydrated and things. So, and it's just a matter of how dehydrated you get is one of the symptoms. And you can progress fairly quickly. So it's very important to take rests frequently, go into the shade, drink lots of water, and on the really hot days and things, avoid alcohol, avoid caffeine, because both of those things tend to dehydrate you or increase your metabolism, which are things that you really don't need to add to in those situations. So those are the three important things. Keep hydrated, rest often, and get some shade.
Sounds like great advice. And how about kind of a broad topic, allergies? Allergic rhinitis. You have the seasonal versus perennial. Can you kind of describe that for those who don't know what rhinitis is?
Yeah. Well, rhinitis, it has to do with the nose. It's a scientific term for that. And I think that just about everybody's probably had some experience with a rhinitis of types. But yes, we're definitely getting into that season. The buds on the trees are starting to pop out, and the other vegetation as well. And as they come out, come pollen. So that's your a seasonal rhinitis is from the pollen, mostly outdoor things, and the seasonal it's a progression because you may be allergic to maple, and those trees don't pop out for another few weeks or so. So you may not have, but oak does a different time, or grasses or different types of plants come. They blossom at different times. You have your pollens out at different times, so you can have different spread. You could be allergic to all of those things and just be miserable all summer long, but sometimes people have it at different times. And then your perennial rhinitis is more basically your indoor allergens. So your dust mites, your pet dander, those kinds of things that are happening mostly indoors. It tends to be more of, again, an annual, year-round type of a thing. Some people call hay fever rhinitis as well.
Okay.
Getting in there. Basically similar symptoms. You can end up with a runny nose, itchy, watery eyes, anything that can have some swelling in your sinuses from pressure and just from them being irritated, they swell up. Those symptoms I know are real general, so sometimes people are, is it allergies, is it a cold, is it something else? It's generally going to be figured out in your progression. Or if you say take something to relieve your pressure, I was going to give a name brand there, but if people use different things for swelling production, trying to work their swelling, Advil, ibuprofen, Tylenol, something along those lines. Those are the kinds of things. If you take something like that and your symptoms seem to reduce, chances are you've got a little bit of an allergy to what's going on.
Good to know.
Yep.
Now the warmer temperatures, it's muggy, whatnot. That means the mosquitoes are back. What are some health issues or threats regarding mosquitoes, and what are some ways to prevent getting bug bites? And besides off and whatnot, maybe there's some precautions we need to take. in
there
regards
are some
to
things
those?
you can do, but let's start at the beginning.
Sure.
So there are over 50 types of mosquitoes found in Massachusetts. We don't know currently how many of them are in West Springfield, but there's a lot. And many of them, in fact, most of them, have no impact on humans whatsoever, or even pets. It's just a few that transmit disease. So we've got diseases like West Nile virus, Eastern equine encephalitis. Those are two that are very common in Massachusetts, more so West Nile, but Triple E is very important. And then, of course, Zika virus, which is the disease du jour, so to speak, on the worldwide level. That's not too far away. We need to be concerned about that. And, of course, people may have heard of dengue fever and chikungunya, which are also mosquito-translated disease or transmitted diseases, not too common in our area. But if you travel, you may be exposed to them in other warmer climates. So.
And you know, when it comes to the Zika virus, what kind of people should be aware of that? I've been told it's like people who are trying to have, conceive a child, or who else?
The biggest issue right now, or impact of Zika virus, tends to be on a fetus or a newborn. So folks who are of that childbearing age, male and female, because a male with Zika virus exposure can transmit it to his partners through sexual intercourse. So that's important to be careful that way. The recommendation at this point is if you've been exposed to Zika virus to abstain for the next 6 months or so, so you can make sure that the virus kind of works out of your system before resuming contact with folks. So it can be pretty serious. They're still doing studies on it. So some of the information may change, but right now, avoid avoid the areas. Be careful. Practice safe sex like you should be doing anyway. But those kinds of things.
Okay. And kind of a similar topic is our ticks. Whether you have a pet or if you have a lot of woods in your backyard, whatever it is, people can be affected by ticks. It can be deer ticks or the American dog ticks. Can you kind of describe those two and how to avoid and all that fun stuff?
The ticks are kind of interesting because they are so different but so alike. That's why they're in that. So and I think that we've got some information for folks, so we can look at that, or you can visit the mass.gov website on ticks. The larvae stage, or they're so teeny tiny.
Right.
And then they get a little bit bigger. And some, like the deer tick, are generally going to be a small tick even at the full adult stage.
Right.
And males and females are different sizes even in full adult stage. And the American dog tick, also bigger than the deer tick, but still the 4 different sizes as they go through their life cycle. And different sizes and slightly different designs on their backs in both genders. So it's important to kind of look at them to know which one you've got. But either way, the prevention for both, I should probably tell you also that deer ticks are more in wooded areas and the dog ticks are more in grassy areas. So it depends on where you're going. If you're out hiking in the woods with your dog, you want to look, well, both at your dog and yourself.
Sure.
But if you're even walking through a field somewhere, you might need to be checking for that as well. And one of the things that you can also do if you're planning on being in those areas is to wear long sleeves, long pants, tuck your pants into your socks, which also means you should be wearing socks out hiking somewhere. And if you wear light colored clothes, it's easier to see ticks. And when you do a tick check on yourself, look for high moisture areas, like around the waistband, maybe around the neck, along the hairline, things like that. Similar with animals, depending upon your fur level, you might still want to be looking up around the collar, sometimes down around the tail. But again, if you've got a long-haired dog like I do, they could be anywhere.
Right, it's hard to find
They could be anywhere.
Yeah, I have a short-haired dog, and it's not easy to find them too sometimes.
But, right, and it's important.
And a quick question too is, how do you properly remove a tick? I know there's myths where if you take a lighter and put it on the tick itself, it comes. But I don't know if those are all true.
There's all kinds of different ways, and you can look at some websites and probably YouTube videos that'll give you different designs. And there are little devices out there, little look like a measuring spoon with a little V cut out of it that you can scoop under the mouth parts.
Yep.
People also show you to use tweezers The important part is to get the mouth parts out of the skin. That's usually what happens is they bite, they go into your skin, and that's where you get the irritation.
Right.
I won't bore people with the details of all of that. But once they're in there, and you want to get those mouth parts out so that they don't continue to cause a problem. Okay. And if you do some things that are not as directed, so to speak, then you may end up leaving some of those parts behind, which could be a problem later on.
Right, right.
But I wanted to go a little bit more into, we mentioned a little about clothing for tick.
Yes.
If you use the same technique for mosquito prevention as well, that'll keep you from getting bites. The interesting thing with wearing light clothes with the mosquitoes is they tend to be attracted to dark clothes, which is unfortunately very true. I found that out by wearing dark clothes when I was doing mosquito control in another jurisdiction. I was like, yeah, this wasn't very smart, but here they are. Yeah, mosquitoes get attracted to carbon dioxide, which is what we exhale all the time. So if you have like a ball cap and you're exhaling and you're wearing dark clothes, they're going to be right here in your face.
Yeah.
Really where you don't want them to be. So that's a fairly easy thing to do these days. And now they even make insecticide impregnating clothing so that you can wear that and it keeps them things off. If you're an outdoor worker, you might want to consider that as an option. Repellents can be used for both ticks and mosquitoes and pretty much the same kind of stuff. Anything with DEET in it is usually pretty good, but if you're putting it on a child, please use the directions accordingly. There's a certain percentage that adults can use that children can't, so be careful on what you're using. There are also other non-chemical repellents that the CDC has approved for use. And I can't remember them offhand, but if you go to cdc.gov, they'll probably tell you there.
Sure.
They're pretty good on that. And then there's things like lemongrass you can use to plant around your yard that is supposed to repel them as well. And there are probably other mosquito repellent plants that you can use for your yard to kind of keep them out. So good things.
Speaking of keeping things out, young wildlife, whether people are going on a hike or if it's in their backyard, what do you do when you encounter young wildlife?
Right. Good, very good question, because this is the time of year. As we're getting into springtime, you're going to find a lot of different animals are having their young. Generally speaking, if a young animal is out there, their parent is not far away. They're watching them. Part of what they need to do to learn to live is to, be in their environment. And having a human come up to them and even just touch them can sometimes make them unpalatable to their family. If they have human scent on them, they often leave them alone, which is contrary to what we really want. So generally speaking, if you see wildlife, leave them alone. If they look like they're injured, then call a professional. Call animal control, call wildlife. It depends on the animal, what it is. Weekends and evenings, you may have to, see if we can get the police to help out. But it's best for the animal and for the neighborhoods to kind of keep wildlife away and leave them alone.
Leave them alone.
Yes.
Speaking of wildlife, we'll get a little more specific.
Yes.
Bats. People get them in their house, or actually mostly they find them in their house or whatnot.
That's the biggest issue, yeah.
When do you remove them? How do you remove them? And if somebody gets in contact with a bat, what do you do?
Yeah. So this again is the time of year. Bats are generally dormant through the winter, particularly in our area because we have cold winters. This is going to be the time where they'll be more active, and they do tend to, if they're not already roosting in their winter space, their summer space, like they overwintered in the same location, they'll be coming back because they focus on their very, very good sense of smell and their sonar. Their eyesight's very bad, but they travel through other methods. They will go back to the place where they were before because the smell of their waste, the guano that they left behind, attracts them back. And bats, like mice and rats, they only need a teeny tiny hole in order to get through, or a small gap. So if you've got, some under your eaves, you've got a little break in the wood, they can get through there. Around chimneys, even in chimneys, a lot of times they'll swoop in. They'll get in that way. Yeah, they can get in. Sometimes they come in when you open the door. You're bringing in the laundry or the groceries from coming in, and they'll fly in with you if it's the right time of day. And generally, you know, they're not going to cause too much problem, although they get bigger, the guano piles get bigger, it gets kind of smelly and that kind of thing. But the biggest concern with bats is the potential of spreading rabies. Now, rabies is a very serious disease. There is no cure for it. It is something that any mammal can get. And in the United States, most of the cases where people contract the disease while in the U.S. are caused by bats. Now, only 10% of bats carry rabies, but most people in the U.S. get it from bats. So there's that balance that we have to run there. And that's where if you find a bat in your house and you were asleep, it woke you up, or you know, it was in the baby's room, or you know, the dog or cat caught it, those are potential exposures to rabies. And we should test that bat for rabies to be sure that you are and your animals are safe. Generally, bats are not hard to catch. You just got to let them rest there and collect them, but to not touch them with your bare hands while doing that. And it's also important not to kind of mutilate them, like smash them, because in order to test an animal for rabies, we need their brain tissue.
Okay.
And it's also the first part of a body that kind of degrades when it dies. So if you cause too much damage, we end up with not being able to verify whether or not it had rabies, which means we have to assume that it did and then treat the people and animals appropriately. So that's the whole point. Now's a good time to go through and make sure you seal up all those gaps that you didn't get before winter, because the cold drafts will be the same places where the animals can come in. Now's the time to go back through, double check all of that before the bats come back, because once they do, if we wait any much longer, then they'll have babies, and the babies can't fly. They won't be leaving the roost for quite a while, so mom and dad will be bringing food back to them. And then until they're old enough to fly, which is generally going to be later in the summer, you'll still have bats in wherever, usually it's the attic, so that bats in the belfry thing. Yeah, it's true. It's true. So it would be important to either get them out before May or after August. And if you actually do need to build out or have them physically removed, it would be very important to call a professional, someone who's trained to do the work, who has the equipment to protect the respiratory system, because guano it can be very toxic if inhaled or touched, so you would need to be appropriate for that. And they also have experience in building and designing the types of devices that you would put over an opening that allows the bats to fly out, but they don't allow them to fly back in. And you can find them. They're not terribly difficult to build if you had the skills to do some of this by yourself, but I still recommend making sure that a trained professional does that kind of work.
Right. And don't bash them in the head if you find them. All right.
Yes, any animal you want tested for rabies, do not bash them in the head.
I don't think I'd have the heart to do that anyway. But
well, sometimes you don't do it on purpose because they are so small.
Sure, they are. And moving on, water conservation. What are some tips to conserve water both indoors and outdoors?
That's really important this time of year. You know, we've been in a drought, moderate to severe drought for a while now. We've gotten a couple of good bouts of rain the last week or so, which has lessened, but we still are in a drought. So it's important for folks to take water conservation seriously all the time, but particularly now. So the things you want to do is to make sure that if you have, you know, an automatic dishwasher, you run it when it's full, or if you have a light load mode on it, to use that, but generally wait till it's full. Same thing with laundry, run full loads only, and only as infrequently as possible. Watering outdoors for the lawn, be careful. There are certain times of day they recommend that it be done early so that it has the most effect for the lawn and doesn't get evaporated through the sun, which would also mean to regulate your automatic sprinkler system appropriately. And one of the key things too is to, if you're watching this from outside of town, is to check with your town's restrictions to make sure that if you're on an even odd, that you're doing that appropriately. Because not only does it save water, but it'll save you from getting a ticket, which some folks in some towns are able to do that. Plants that are drought tolerant are also a good thing to put in. There's grasses that are more drought tolerant than others, things to consider so that you don't have to water as much. Also, you know, if we like to keep our driveways nice and clean. but sweep them off instead of hosing them off, because hosing them takes a lot of water, and anything that runs off into the ground is not necessarily a good way to spend things. You want it to soak into the ground, which would be another reason why if you're washing your car at home and not at the car wash, that you wash it on the grass, so all that runs in, which also has a double benefit. Some of that soaps will kill some bugs too.
Right.
Something to consider.
And speaking about water, whether people are going to the beach or if they're swimming in their pool or going to the lake, what are some swimming safety tips that people can take?
Swimming is a very risky endeavor, which is why at camps they consider it a high-risk activity for summer camps and activities. But a couple of things, no matter where you're going, is never swim alone. You should always swim in an area that is monitored, lifeguard, or it's been designated as a swimming area, because generally if a community has gone that far, they know what's out there. And then no, don't mix alcohol. Water and alcohol don't mix, whether it's in your drink or elsewhere. And also to careful when diving. I know folks in West Springfield may kind of take that to heart right now.
Certainly.
But it's definitely got to be water that's deep enough, and you should be able to see the bottom. So I recommend against swimming in rivers that aren't in areas where there's a bathing beach designated. Rock quarries are popular, but you need to be careful. You need to kind of know what's down there, because things can happen if you're not safe.
So, and kind of rolling into head safety is helmets.
Yes.
When I think helmets, you think, riding a bike, but certainly there's other uses for helmets that people could use.
Yep.
What are some tips and possible uses for helmets?
These days there's a helmet for just about everything, which is good. So if you are a lacrosse player, or you play hockey, or you're just a motorcycle rider or a bicycle rider or skateboarding, all these kinds of things have different helmets. Even winter sports, I think we may have mentioned there too, but just about every activity does have some type of a headwear for it. And each one's designed a little differently with a slightly different purposes. I mean, it's all to protect the head. Sometimes lacrosse you like to have to protect the face as well. So there's some different criteria there. But it's really important not only to buy the right size helmet for your person, but to also put it on appropriately. I've seen a couple of times where you're riding down the road and somebody's got their helmet on backwards. It's not quite set to protect the right parts of your head. The other thing too important to remember about helmets, and I have ridden motorcycles in the past, and is what they mentioned to me when buying a helmet there is, you drop the helmet, you compress that protective material, and if you do that too often, it's not as protective as it could be. Right. I don't know if all helmets are that way, but it's a good thing to keep in mind, and to maybe read the directions on the helmet and ask the professionals that are going to be selling them to you if this is the case, and then be careful with that. Right. I think that's also a caution to be said when using any type of a used helmet or a hand-me-down. So it's important to take good care of your head.
Absolutely. Poison ivy. I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, have encountered it and had a rash at some point in our lives. What kind of poison ivy should we look out for? Of course, where can you find poison ivy, and if there's any specific treatments we could.
Poison ivy. It's something that I used to never get till about a little while ago. Anyway, so quite the surprise that you find it, and it's interesting. There are people who can spot poison ivy right away. I'm still not familiar with exactly what it looks like. I know we've got some good pictures we can show the audience to give you some idea. And in preparing for this conversation with you, I also realized that poison ivy looks different in the spring than it does in the summer. So it still has that same leaves of 3 going on, but it's a little more red in the spring, a little greener. I also found out that you could be in bushes, so it's not just a vine crawling along the grass or up the side of a tree. So this is the interesting too. You see the big trees, and you have these big, thick vines with lots of hair on the side of them going up the side of a tree. Yeah, that's a poison ivy vine.
Okay. Stay away from that one, I guess.
You want to stay away from that one. And one of the ways to kind of kill it from there would be to actually chop a chunk out of it so it's no longer contiguous. You can't really pull it all off, because that's where the oils, and it's the oils from the plant that actually what causes your reaction. Your body reacts to that. So you want to be sure that you're not using bare hands, and that whatever tools you use for removing them, you also clean with alcohol. You want to break down the oils. One of the things that I have made the mistake personally, in you think you've been exposed to poison ivy and then you go wash. Well, if you use like hot water, it just spreads the oils around.
Right.
And now you have more space. You know, you maybe get a little oil in the crook of your elbow, and now sweat has had it go everywhere.
Right.
So again, long sleeves, long pants, gloves, you'll cover yourself up. Right. You'll protect yourself from a lot of different things.
Even if it's 95 degrees out.
Very true. And
right, yeah.
you know, technology is so great these days that even clothing is much more breathable,
right.
and it's much more tolerant for those kinds of high weather, but still hydrate.
Definitely.
Okay, bring
As
that
we
all back
mentioned
together.
before, right. Yes.
Exactly,
yeah.
Bringing it all around. So you do want to, if you think you've been exposed to poison ivy, you want to remove it as soon as possible, get the oils off. There are plenty of different brands out there, but basically you're looking for something that can break down oil, those types of thick things. There's a word, it's not coming to me. So
that's all right.
You break it down, then you want to do that. And then it's important to wash after that to get it through. And the same thing with your clothing, because it could be on your clothes, and if you don't get it off your clothes the next time you wear them, you could potentially be exposed to it through that method. But it's also important to note that if you're pulling up poison ivy, it could be in the roots as well as anywhere along the plant and on the leaf.
Right.
There are some, depending upon how you look at it, the horrible or incredible pictures of poison ivy rashes on websites that it'll just amaze you what people have done. So it's important, if you get it ahead of time, it'll be a little less painful. If it gets a little spread, you may have to actually go to a physician and get prescription medications to help you deal with resolving that issue. And if you get it in your eye or your ear or your mouth or other organs, it could be a problem, and you need to take some more precautions for that.
Okay. And then we can't avoid this, whether it's sunny or cloudy. It's the sun.
It is.
And I think a lot of us don't realize how powerful it really is, especially when we go, even if it's in the springtime or even in the fall. What are some sun protection tips that people can take?
See, we're going to do this. There's a theme here. You can wear protective clothing, but sunscreen that's appropriate for what you're going to be doing. And they've come a long way these days too for different water repellent, water resistant, long duration, short duration stuff. Again, different for adults than for children, and certainly should be putting it on as frequently as recommended on the directions, the product that they're using, but definitely more than once in a 4-hour period if you're out that long.
Right.
And even for short period of times, you should put poison ivy on. No, put sunscreen on so that you can protect yourself. And don't forget the tips of your ears and your nose. Sometimes people forget that. If you've got a deep part in your hair, that's a place. Or if you've got even less hair, make sure you get that. Or better yet, cover that with a hat. Right. Sometimes wide brim hats will help protect the ears. It also gives a little bit more shade. They also protect your eyes because your eyes can get damaged by the sun as well. So sunglasses, brim, anything that provides shade. Again, another part of our theme now. To help protect you from that.
Right, and I was told too, people with blue eyes or lighter eyes are more their eyes are more sensitive to the sun versus people with brown eyes or darker eyes. Is that true?
I don't know. I probably have to ask a good geneticist about that.
Right,
I'm not so sure. I haven't heard. Being a brown-eyed person, I'm not so sure.
But either way, get the sunglasses on and you won't have that problem.
Definitely, and shade. Seek shade.
Exactly. And our final segment is, this is my favorite part, dog poop, fact or fiction.
Yes.
What are some facts and some common myths about dog poop that we need to know about?
I think a lot of people think that it might be okay to allow dog waste to just sit. You know, you take your dog for a walk, it's not pooping in your yard, so that's okay.
Right. Fertilizer?
And it's not really. It's not. Like human waste, animal waste carries a lot of different diseases and germs in it, just that are natural to them, may not cause them any problem, but it could be a problem for another animal. And I know it's gross, but dogs do eat poo, their own and others. So you can transmit things that way. And also the diseases, if they're left in there, they can travel through the ground, through rain to get into the groundwater, or also get runoff into the surface water and cause problems that way as well. That's one of the reasons why if you go camping, they tell you not to drink the surface water. You got to bring a filter because it's full of diseases from wildlife that poops in the area. So we want to take care of our domestic animals and not leave it out there. Not only because it's kind of gross to be walking on your own property and have someone else's dog poo on it, but it's also bad for your own environment to leave it that way. And a lot of people don't necessarily believe that, but it's true. In fact, it will transmit disease. I want to see what we got for other fiction. Fiction would be that it's safe. So disposing of poo. You pick it up, ideally flushing it down the toilet would be a good thing. But composting, you can do that, but you have to do it in an appropriate compost situation, not just pile of poo in the backyard, back corner, because that will still smell, just like just piling up grass will smell. It's proper compost requires incorporation of several different items in a certain manner and rotating, and composting is an art. So follow the directions for that kind of stuff. One of the things that I found interesting, again, in preparing for this is the estimated number of dogs in the country at 78.2 deposit 10 million tons of waste per year.
That's it?
It sounds like but that comes out to be 268,000 tractor trailer loads of poo.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, 10 million doesn't sound like much, but 268 tractor trailer. I think people can picture a tractor trailer.
Right.
Full of poo.
My gosh.
Yeah, that's what gets into our water.
Oh.
And you don't want that. And the other part is a lot of times people will walk their animals in parks, playgrounds, play areas, and you don't want your kid sliding in the outfield into pile of poo.
Right.
So it's important to clean up after your dog appropriately, dispose it. A lot of our parks in West Springfield, they have dog do containers where you can put them in there to dispose of them. And if they don't, I'm sure there's plenty of trash cans. You bring your own pooper scooper bag with you, pick it up, throw it out.
Exactly. And it's cheap too. Like if there isn't one, they cost pennies at your local store. So. Absolutely.
And if you get the newspaper bag's a good thing.
That's what I do. I save those, the orange bags, Yeah.
It's the responsibility, good pet ownership, and it's good for the environment, good for people, good for do.
That's right. Nice campaign slogan. Yeah. Any other facts or fictions about dog poo?
Oh, who knows what we got. We talked to you about it. It does transmit diseases. Yep. People think that it doesn't, but it does. And that was what I came up with for you. So, maybe the audience will share some other good facts and fiction.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, Jeanne, I want to thank you for being here again for the M.O.B. report. Can't wait to dive in again, hopefully in the fall. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's the M.O.B. report. I'm your host, Christopher Stone. And until then, stay safe out there and have fun. We'll see you soon. Bye.